Cleveland Cavaliers. Tonight, they are in Orlando taking on Paolo Banchero and the Orlando Magic. And then on Friday, they head to TD Garden to take on the reigning defending NBA champion Boston Celtics, which just so happens to be the two teams they played in the NBA playoffs last season. Of course, we took out the Magic in 7 games in round 1 and then lost to the Celtics in 5 games in the second round. But I'll tell you this, those two series had more than just the regular playoffs on the line. Because do you think I forgot about the 2009 Eastern Conference Finals when we got eliminated by Dwight Howard, Hedo Turkoglu, Rashard Lewis, Jameer Nelson, Rafer Alston? No, I do not.
Who's Rayford Alston? I'm serious. I don't remember Rayford Alston.
He was on the 2009 Orlando Magic. And then with the Boston Celtics, do you think I've forgotten 2010 and 2008? Nope, I have not. So I view both of those series as revenge for 2009 and then 2008 and 2010.
See,
So,
you old sports grudges from like decades in the past. I look at it as eras. So to me, that 2024 matchups with the Cavs against the Magic and Celtics have nothing to do with getting revenge from 2009 and 2010 because in those days we had LeBron James, Larry Hughes, Antoine Jameson. The Celtics had Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, Kevin Garnett. You mentioned who Orlando had on those teams. Those guys are ancient dinosaurs pretty much by now in the NBA, most of them at least.
that's true, but I'm not the type of guy to forgive and forget. Like, I'm telling you, Celtics Cavs is one of the best rivalries in the NBA right now, if not the best. I would put Thunder Timberwolves up there right now.
I don't think there is a rivalry in the NBA. I don't think the NBA players believe in rivalries anymore. I've said it and I have been saying it.
Well, I strongly disagree with you there. But anyway, so we do have these 2 playoff rematches. Both are on the road. We got Orlando tonight. We're seeking our 8th straight win after 2 impressive victories against the Knicks and Grizzlies. Man, the Knicks have been in a tailspin since.
Yeah, you were so worried. For those viewers last week, Josh was very concerned about this stretch, and I said the Cavs are going to at least go 3-2 in this stretch, and they're already 3-0.
Yeah, I was. And it'd be great if we can at least go 4-1. Although I don't want to lose the regular season series 3-1 against Boston because that won't make me feel good if we match up with them in the conference finals. I understand that regular season has no effect on the postseason, but knowing that we lost 3-1 against them, it would waver my confidence going against them in a potential conference finals should that play out. Maybe I'm reading too much into the regular season stuff, but that's just how I am sometimes. But in terms of Orlando, this is our 2nd game of the season against them, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
And they've been banged up all year. Pablo Banchero just came back. Jalen Suggs is still out for them. They're not as good. I know the Wagner brothers missed some time earlier in the year.
One of them is out for the season.
Yeah. And so to me, like, they're not as good as they were a year ago. Like, this is a completely different Orlando team that we faced in April of last year. And it is a completely different Cavs team because the Cavs actually have a confident offense, and it looks like Evan Mobley and Jared Allen have actually reached their potential of being physical.
Yes. By the way, I was right. This is our 2nd meeting of the season with the Magic. We beat them earlier, 120-109, back on November 1st. That
was a very early matchup. This is our first trip down to Orlando, though, right?
Yes, and it's our only trip to Orlando this season because our last game against them will be March 16th here in Cleveland. And then Friday in Boston will mark the fourth and final game of the regular season series between the two teams. Uh, I put more weight on the Boston game because we are the top two teams in the Eastern Conference. However, Orlando is one of those teams that we could possibly match up with in the first round because they are currently the number 7 seed, which puts them in the play-in tournament.
It looks very likely to me it's going to be Orlando, Miami, or Atlanta.
Of those teams, I do not want to play Atlanta. No,
See,
thank
I
you.
would love to play Atlanta. I don't care if they beat us twice. I know they have some shooters, but that team is small. Outside of they don't have a big. They're very reliant on 3-point shooting. You could physical up Trey Young in the postseason. I think it'd be a completely different series if we played them 4 times in 7 games.
My guess is we're going to end up playing Miami in the first round, which I don't
Which
love that.
which without Jimmy Butler, I mean, they're showing themselves. Bam Adebayo and Tyler Hero are their two best players. That should honestly be a 4 or 5 game sweep for a Cavalier team. I'll be honest with you, Josh. I don't put much weight into either of these two games. Barring a collapse, the Cavs are going to be the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. They're still up 5.5 games on the Celtics. Even if we lose to Boston, we'll still be 4.5 games up with the time that's remaining, about a month left and a half in the regular season. That's not a huge lead, but the way the Cavs have been playing, it's a good enough substantial lead that they should have the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference, and that's the only thing I care about.
Yeah, because if we get to a game 7 against the Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals, having the number 1 seed would be huge because that would be.
It's not even about that. I would just rather have Boston play New York in the second round than us, because I think the Knicks are locked into the 3 seed.
Yeah, the Knicks are a distant 3 seed, though. Like,
Oh yeah, there are only 4 teams in the NBA that can win the championship this year. There's 2 in the East. I could make an argument for 5. I'll get into that in our next segment. There's 2 in the East, and there's 1 clear in the West, and I think you can make an argument for potentially 2 more. But I think the East is a 2-horse race.
I would agree with you. If I had to guess, we're going to end up playing Milwaukee in the second round, which I could see that being a 6 or 7 game
Well,
series.
here's the thing. Do we even know? I mean, think about the last 2 postseasons for Milwaukee. Giannis has been hurt. And I don't know what Milwaukee is. I don't know what to expect from Milwaukee anymore. To me, they're not a championship team. They're a weird team. I don't even know if they're going to get out of the first round.
I think if the season were to start today, let me double
I think
check.
they play Indiana.
Yes, that is correct. They would play Indiana.
And Indiana beat them last year in the postseason.
But check this out. Detroit is only a game behind Indiana.
But as I keep saying, what do we know about the Pistons? Who's their coach? I don't care how they do in the regular season. We know who their freaking postseason coach is, Josh.
That's true. That would be an interesting series if it was New York against Detroit in the
Oh,
first
New
round.
York would kill them. Kill them. It'd be a 4-game sweep. I'd bet a Dr. Pepper bottle if that was the series that it would be a 4-game sweep. I'm that confident.
I'm not disagreeing, but I do think it would be an interesting series regardless. But
What would be an interesting series to watch the Cavs former coach get his ass kicked because he couldn't reach the potential of Evan Mobley?
Anyway, Evan Mobley's going to be the key for me in these 2 games against the Magic.
I agree with you 100%. Evan Mobley needs to become a man, not a boy, a man. And I'm not talking about games against the Wizards and the Nets and the Hawks and the Hornets. I'm talking about these big boy. If you want to call them regular season meaningful games, this is as meaningful as a regular season game as you're going to get.
Yeah, because tonight you're going against Paolo Banchero, who we saw in the first round last year is
I would make the argument, I know, and I could understand that you're going to say it was Donovan Mitchell, but I could make a legit argument that in that playoff series last year, Pablo Banchero was the best player on the court.
I would hear your argument about that for sure. I think I would give the slight edge to Donovan Mitchell, but I think I would make it like 51-49 into
I think it's yeah. I mean, the fact that it's that close should again tell you how embarrassing it should have been. 'Cause that shouldn't even have been a series. We let Orlando grow up last year, and Orlando was supposed to take a step up. Now, I think again this year it has to do more with injuries. I mentioned, the Wagner brothers being out, Benkira was out for a while. Excuse me, Jalen Suggs is still out. So I don't know, man. Orlando's a very weird team that kind of wrap my arms around this year, but I just think we're completely better.
Orlando. I'm surprised they didn't make any moves at the trade deadline. That I was kind of thinking they were going to go out and get somebody.
Well, but
Like,
they have a bunch of young guys. The thing they're trying to build. They're a year ahead of schedule.
yeah, but still, like we saw what Orlando was last year. And
But again, I once you get the injuries, Benkira was out the third game of the year, so they're kind of like, okay, what are we gonna do?
right, but they're still right there in the mix for the playoffs.
Yeah, but they're not really contenders, and I think they know that. No matter what move they made, unless they went out and got Kevin Durant, that's the only real difference maker that they could have really gotten.
Yeah, and I don't think Durant would have wanted to go there. But in terms of Boston, yeah, oh God, that last home game against the Celtics, Kristaps Porzingis deserves a Grammy or an Oscar, I should say, for his acting job. Uh, he should go to Broadway when he's done with the NBA. That's how good he was. But
I think the bottom line was the Cavs bench didn't come to play in that game, and the Cavs shot poorly, and that's going to happen in some games.
it wasn't just the bench, though. It was Evan Mobley didn't play well in that game.
No, but when you don't get barely any production from a Sam Merrill, a Ty Jerome, like that's what makes the Cavs team so good this year. It's their depth.
Evan Mobley had 7 points. Max Strus had 2. Like that's
And
not.
again, that to me is the story. You got, outside of Mitchell and Garland, someone's got to step up.
Yes, and you're talking about the bench. Niang, who was still with us at the time, 6 points. Levert 0. Ty Jerome 8. The only one who showed up was Sam Merrill with 12.
Yeah. Well, speaking of a move that was made at the trade deadline, Luka Doncic and the Los Angeles Lakers, who tonight will put on a show and put the Dallas Mavericks in their place. What a performance Saturday night against a team they previously could not beat in the Denver Nuggets. And this was the showing, and this was the thing that Laker Nation, the Lake Show fans, needed to see to say, hey, we are now a legitimate NBA Finals contender, at least Western Conference Finals contender.
Yeah, for sure. If they can sneak up into that 5 seed and possibly match up with Houston, they could win that series.
Yeah, I agree. I think, the West has a bunch of good teams that are young. Your Memphises, your Houstons. I think they're really good teams, but I think they're too young to win a championship this year. So, in my opinion, I think the Lakers, again, tremendous showing of what they had on Saturday night. Luka Doncic being the quarterback of the team, if you will, LeBron being the wide receiver of the team, if you will, them playing off each other, and the way they dominated Denver the way they did, to me, this is a regular season game where you take a look at that if you're the Lakers and you say, okay, if we do match up with Denver potentially in the second round, this could go differently than what it has in the last 2 seasons.
Yeah, for sure. But it's not just Luka. Granted, it would have been great if that trade had worked out with Charlotte. I don't know what all happened with that. But, they got Austin Reeves playing well. They got Rui playing well. Another player they acquired, Dorian Finney-Smith, is playing well for them. And they may not have a true big, but they, made Nikola Jokic uncomfortable in that game Saturday night.
And that's what they're going to have to do because they don't have a true big. Now, it would worry me a little bit that 4 times in 7 games you got to deal with Jokic as opposed to a one-off. I think that's a different issue. But I think here's the thing about Denver, and I said this at the end of the Minnesota series. Remember, that was the series we disagreed on the most in the postseason last year. Denver, just for whatever reason, I don't know. It's like out of the championship, they've sort of rested on their morals. And it's kind of Jokic and Jamal Murray or bust. I like Denver. I think they can be a championship team. I just don't know if they have enough depth to deal with the likes of Oklahoma City. I think they have probably the best player in the world right now in Nikola Jokic. But if Nikola Jokic is not spectacular, if they don't have the deep bench that they had a few years ago, which now the Lakers have.
Yeah. Um, which I think if the Lakers match up with OKC in a possible conference finals, the Lakers could possibly win that series. Granted, OKC has the two bigs in in Chet Holmgren and Isaiah Hartenstein. But here's my question. Does OKC have enough tread on the tires, for lack of better phrasing, in terms of playoff experience? Like, you look at,
Um, I don't think that necessarily matters when your team is as deep as young as Oklahoma City, and they got it last year. And usually in the NBA, when you flame out the year before and you're as good as you are the next year, you learn from that experience. I think Oklahoma City just has too many young, good players, and I think in a 7 game series, I love this LeBron and Luka Laker team, but you mentioned a guy like Rui, like Dorian Finney-Smith. If they don't give you 4 or 5 really good games, if they're inconsistent, the Lakers are going to have a really hard time scoring and running up and down the court with Oklahoma City for 48 minutes.
I do think the Lakers would have the two best players in that series.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Um,
But here's the thing, the Thunder would have the MVP on their side because I think SGA should have won MVP last year, and I think he's going to win MVP this season as Brandon's head has disappeared, and I guess he's the invisible man now.
no, it's the virtual background cut off my head. I guess I was leaning back into the screen because I was thinking. I was thinking now that you mentioned MVP, I was like, you know what? We haven't even talked about the NBA MVP this year at all. Period.
No, we haven't. I think that's mostly because the NFL has dominated the airwaves for obvious reasons. But, you know, Yo- Denver has the reigning MVP. And yet, like I said, the Lakers kind of control them even though they don't have a true big man.
Yeah,
Which,
Jokic is getting to the LeBron point where it's like he could win MVP every single year, and you wouldn't argue. Listen, I predicted SGA to win MVP before the year, and I predicted the Thunder to not only make the NBA Finals but win it. Um, and I think you can make the real argument right now that SGA is probably the most valuable player in the NBA.